Not sure if I'm 27, overreacting to BFs, 30, joking. Hi all, I'll try to make this short. My boyfriend and I have been dating for about 9 months, have known each other for almost 2 years, and things have been okay. There are a few hiccups here and there, but we've mostly worked those out. My boyfriend works in an office and makes pretty good money, enough that both of us could live on, as he's always telling me, unprompted. I, however, am on disability and have been ever since I turned 19. I've had little part-time jobs here and there, but nothing too high-paying or anything, as I would lose my disability. We never spoke much about how much either of us made or where our income came from until 3 months ago when he started talking about moving in together. A reason I don't date much is that I'm always ashamed to tell people where my income comes from, as my disability isn't exactly something you can tell from just looking at me. Either way, I've never asked him to pay anything for me. We often go Dutch when we go out, or one of us treats the other. I live at home right now and have told him that I'm okay with moving in, but that I wouldn't be able to contribute as much as he would be able to. That prompted the serious talk about income. I told him how I got my money, and he was quiet for a long time. He said he would never have guessed, and now my weird schedule made sense, and we continued talking about moving in together. Since I thought everything was okay, I agreed, and we started looking for places. This is where things have started getting annoying and downright hurtful. We've seen a few places since we started looking, but mostly, we have just been looking at places online. We'll be looking at his laptop, seeing a place, and starting to talk about what each of us wants or doesn't want. Sometimes, if I disagree with something he wants or doesn't want, he'll joke and say something like, "I'm not sure you should have much say about XYZ as you won't be paying as much as I will." Or my money talks louder than yours and says this is what we should get/not get, and then laugh and say, "You know, I'm just joking. I care about your opinions because you'll be living there." It's happened twice, as we've been looking at places. He's joked to our potential landlord that they shouldn't ask me any questions because the only thing I'm really doing is just putting my name on the lease/rental agreement. I have never felt so embarrassed in my life, so I'll go off and look at the rest of the place and avoid him and the landlord. This is not the only thing, as he jokes about a lot of things, especially since he found out about my income. He'll say things like, "I'm so tired after working all day, I wish I could just sit around as you do," or "It must be nice to get to sleep in every day, I wish I could do that, but if I don't work, I couldn't take care of myself," and they all feel like little digs at me. Now, I've known my boyfriend for almost 2 years. He lived with his parents before we started dating, where he did not pay rent or help with bills, didn't do anything around his house, and his mother and father would go on and on about that, even though he had a job. He's also not good with saving, so even though he was living free at home, he did not have anything saved. I've helped my parents with bills and help around the house, and I have very small savings, yet he keeps talking down on me as if all I do is just sit at home all day, collect a check, and don't do anything with it. Believe me, if I could work regularly like him, I would be working. It just seems like he's gotten super snobby or something since, and it's been grating on my nerves. I've spoken to him on numerous occasions about this, but all he says is that I'm taking it too seriously and making a big deal out of nothing and refuses to talk about it any further. I've asked if he is fine with the fact that I don't work regularly, and he says he's fine with it and that, of course, he makes enough for both of us to live on, so it's not a problem. However, again, he'll throw in a dig and undo anything good he has said. This is the reason I hate dating and relationships, because unless you've got some amazing job somewhere, people think you're just some slob or something, and it makes me feel so bad. Like, I don't deserve to be dating anyone. And while I've thought about leaving, I keep thinking I shouldn't leave because I won't ever find another guy who is okay with my income. More info. In my mind, I never really saw anything changing between us with this knowledge because money never really was a problem with our relationship. I figured if things got serious as they have, I'd have to tell him, and we'd figure things out together. He always seemed like such a sweet guy and never said anything bad or demeaning about disabled people or poor people or anything, so this really came out of left field for me. I never thought about how vulnerable my disability would make me, but then again, I've never tried to merge finances and life with anyone else, so I guess this was a learning experience. I also never even thought of it as abuse, to be honest. I just thought he was being oddly mean. He excuses his behavior by saying that's him, and if people don't like it, they aren't his people, and he can't help if people are sensitive. Because if this is verbal abuse, he's been doing it since I've known him. It's just never really been aimed at me. I guess I just let my thinking get in my way, not to mention the few relationships I have had. They all fell apart once the income thing came up. I don't plan to move in with him until we've had a talk, and I'll see what comes of it. I don't think I could live with his constant joking all the time because it's not a joke to me, it just makes me feel embarrassed, and like I'm not a proper adult. I do plan to talk to him one more time and let him know I'm dead serious about him stopping these jokes because they aren't funny to me in any way. Edit. Thank you all for your comments, and to anyone I couldn't get back to. I've just got a lot on my mind to think about after reading all these comments, and some things have come to my attention. I think the situation is actually more serious than I thought it was. He was just mean when it came to joking, but apparently, this is a sign of verbal and emotional abuse, and I just know I don't want to be in a situation like that. I'm going to talk to him and see what he has to say and go from there. Thank you all again. Update, I spoke to my boyfriend the day after I responded to a lot of you. I decided I was going to talk to him one more time and set a boundary about these jokes or tell him I wasn't moving in with him and that maybe we need to reevaluate the relationship. I told him I wanted to have a serious discussion, and he immediately asked if I wanted to break up with him because he figured it was coming. I was taken aback because I didn't expect that reaction. I didn't say anything at first, but then I told him that I wanted to talk to him about his jokes and, honestly, his behavior in general when it comes to people and making fun of them in such a mean way, especially when they ask him to stop. I also did a little reading on verbal abuse and abuse in general, and things were a lot more clear. So, he listened to me and then told me that he didn't like people trying to change him. He said that his last girlfriend had tried to do the same, and she couldn't accept him for who he was. He thought I would be different because I was more understanding and fun. I'll admit, that is probably one of my flaws, that I try to understand everyone's position about most things and give them far too many chances. There are exceptions, but for the most part, I will try to understand someone and work with them on it. I asked him if she, his ex, and the overweight friend were the only ones who had left him over this behavior, and he told me that he'd lost a lot of friends and that dating was hard because women tended to cut out pretty quickly. In his words, this happens because people are too sensitive and want him to change how he is. He seemed very stuck on being accepted as he is and angry about people trying to change him. I changed direction and asked him if he actually thought anything was wrong with what he said. I used my experiences, specifically, and told him about how I felt when we were looking at places, and he said what he said to the potential landlords. He, of course, said they were jokes and that he'd never think less of me because of how much money I made because he kind of figured I didn't make a lot because of how I tended to do things. I asked him to elaborate, and he said how I was always on things like Groupon using coupons at stores or wanting to go out when places had specials or something, and he was never around anyone who needed to do that type of thing. So, I told him that I did think he has a problem with people who earn less and don't live a similar lifestyle to him and that, maybe he just didn't see it. That, sometimes, we are trying to be good because we have these thoughts of how we should be on the surface, and we try to follow them. But when it's closer to home, our real feelings come out because we're faced with it more, and I told him that was okay, but that I didn't think it would work for us, that he might be more comfortable with someone who makes the same amount as him and can contribute how he'd like. He interrupted me and told me he didn't want someone like that because he couldn't be himself around someone obsessed with money and material things. Not what I said, by the way, that they'd be too concerned with money and he liked me because I wasn't that way. I kind of ignored that, but it kind of told me that he either doesn't want someone who has as much power in the relationship as he has, or he thinks women who want more / expect more of him are gold diggers or someone trying to take advantage in some way. I don't know. Anyway, I continued and told him that even if he felt they were just jokes, they were wearing on me and my self-esteem, and I couldn't live that way. I also told him that it's natural for people not to want to change when they've been a certain way for a long time, and so it seems right to us, but that change can be good, that maybe therapy could help with that. I told him that it's wonderful to be accepted for who you are, but if who you are is, well, jerkish, people are a lot less likely to accept you unless they are also jerks, and nothing good can come from a bunch of jerks getting together because they'll be toxic to other people, as well as to each other, and I told him I think he's better than that he deserves much better. That any woman he truly loves deserves much better than being verbally abused and made to feel like they aren't as equal or worthy. He sat there and didn't say anything for a while, he just looked at me and sighed a lot. He finally said he was disappointed in me for wanting to abandon him because he thought we were true soulmates, and he couldn't believe I was saying such abusive stuff about him. I was shocked he was calling me abusive because I didn't think I was being abusive by telling him why I didn't want to continue if this is how he will act and that the way he acts is not, well, good. Maybe I went a little far in saying anything about a future girlfriend, but I guess I wanted to impress on him that, if his friends and partners keep leaving because of this behavior, everyone will keep leaving. The only partners willing to stay will be someone who dishes it just as well as they take it, and he knows he's actually very sensitive and wouldn't like that, or it'll be someone who lacks any self-esteem and he'll make her feel even worse about herself until she breaks down. I could feel myself getting to that point, and that's why I'm so angry and frustrated. Not only with the fact that he was now turning all this around to me being abusive, but that he still didn't really seem to get what I was saying about my feelings. It made me realize, yes, I need to leave this situation and I do feel bad about it because I do feel like I'm abandoning him, but at the same time, it just doesn't seem like my feelings or anyone's are important to him, so why should I stay with someone who doesn't seem to get that his behavior isn't exactly such that gets people to stay in his life? I realized I probably wasn't going to get to him, and the conversation itself had me shaking because I was upset and disappointed myself. However, looking back, I could see signs that this is who he is. Other people's feelings just don't mean a lot to him, and doing some soul searching, I realized that I, stupidly, thought he would change over time, but waiting on that is wearing on me, and our last conversation tells me that he doesn't see anything wrong with what he does, so it's unlikely he will change. He didn't seem interested in saying anything else besides that he was sorry I felt the way I did. I told him that I thought we needed to give up on things and find someone better for ourselves elsewhere. He didn't say anything, so I just left. A few hours later, I got a confusing text from him telling me that he hadn't seen who I was and that I had abusive tendencies. I didn't respond and just blocked him on everything. I'm sad things ended the way they did, but it was probably for the best. I'll either be good alone, or I'll find someone who I work better with. And I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who commented on my last post, and sorry if I didn't get back to anyone. I've been quite torn up over this, even though it was my decision. I miss him more as a friend than a partner, but I don't think being friends would work out too well, either, so I'm just leaving it. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Cheating wife told me she was going out with friends but GPS proved otherwise, so I surprised her. I, 29M, recently divorced my ex-wife, 27F, due to infidelity. My wife and I first met at a mutual friend's housewarming party, and we liked each other instantly. She was sweet and intelligent, and the more we got to know ourselves better, my feelings for her increased. Like every other love story, we went on multiple dates, dated, and married after 2 years of dating. If a psychic had told me that my wife would cheat on me in the future, I wouldn't have believed him/her. My wife and I were the kind of couple you would see wearing matching outfits and holding hands wherever we went. We were always all over each other, and she adored the ground I walked on. Our marriage was fun and happy, and we explored so much together. My wife was my first true love. I had been in relationships in high school and college, but they weren't serious. I was the shy teenage boy and adult who sucked at sustaining relationships, but it was so easy with my wife. We clicked easily, and everything was smooth between us. My wife worked as a hairdresser in a ladies' beauty shop while I worked for a construction company. We both looked forward to a simple and happy life and were content with what we earned. For the 2 years my wife and I were married, I never suspected my wife was cheating. In fact, it felt like a dream when I found out that she was cheating on me. My wife loved hanging out with her friends at least once a week. They would often go out on Friday evenings as a group, fix a picnic on Saturdays, or even hang out at a bar. I wasn't so social like my wife, and I didn't have a lot of friends, but I had one of my colleagues from work who I was very close to, and he was almost like my best friend. Before I found out that my wife was cheating on me, a couple of signs led to my suspicion. For example, my wife, who used to be talkative and would share the latest gist with me whenever she returned home, suddenly became reserved. She only talked when I asked her a question, and our conversations felt forced. She always made me feel like she was doing me a favor whenever we spoke, and I hated that. In the bedroom, she started complaining that I loved getting intimate too much and that life did not revolve around getting intimate all the time. If she wasn't complaining about that, she would tell me she wasn't in the mood. She always gave one excuse after the other. When this started, I thought she acted that way because she was very stressed from work and indirectly vented her frustration on me. I didn't take action immediately because I believed she would come around. There was even a time I thought I was the problem, and I began to reevaluate myself. I watched how I talked to her, my tone, and even how I acted around her. I was a very bossy person in nature, but I always consciously tried to talk to her as a wife, and I watched my tone all the time. I even went as far as taking her out to fancy dinners because there was also a time she complained that I was getting boring, and I stopped doing the things we used to do while we were dating. I tried my best to rekindle our love and get back to the happy couple we once were, but nothing I did worked. She didn't appreciate anything I did, so I just stopped. When I stopped, I started paying more attention to her body language. For example, if I tried to hug her from behind like I used to, she would push me with her elbow and look disgusted. That happened at least 3 different times before I concluded something was wrong. Meanwhile, I noticed that she would dress well each time she said she wanted to go out with her friends. It's not like she wasn't dressing well before. She seemed more excited and took more time to do her makeup and hair. The truth was, I suspected she was seeing someone, mainly because of her changes, and I planned to confront her once I had proof. I wasn't the kind of man who would wait 10 days or for eternity to plan a stupid revenge before I confronted her. I had serious anger issues, and I'd teach her a lesson before we got to the revenge part. One day, I was at home on a weekend, thinking of ways to find out if my wife was having an affair behind my back. Our relationship had gotten worse, and we were almost like a male and female roommate living together, and we only spoke to each other for important reasons. I watched my wife dress up, do her hair, and do her makeup. Before she left, she said she was going out with the girls, and she left. For some reason, my instincts told me she was lying. I can't explain why, but I strongly believed she was lying. So, after she left, I called one of her girlfriends and pretended like I wanted to speak with my wife. I claimed I kept calling her number, but she wasn't taking my calls. When I explained everything to her, her friend was confused because she was across the country and didn't have plans to meet with my wife that weekend. Her friend also said that before they all hung out together, they would announce it on their private WhatsApp group chat, but there was no announcement, and she was sure my wife wasn't hanging with the other girls. Immediately I heard this, I knew she had either gone to be with her lover or she had to be somewhere else. I wasn't even bothered about finding her because I knew I could track her by GPS. Without wasting time, I left the house and followed her GPS, and it led me to a football stadium. To confirm this, I saw my wife's car parked outside and knew she was there. There weren't many people in the stadium, making it easier to spot her. When I saw her, I was shocked to see her with her little sister's high school football coach, and she was in his arms, laughing and kissing him regularly. The sight alone made me so furious. I wanted her to know I had seen her, so I walked to her and her app, took out my phone, and started making the video as she walked to them. I was even talking in the video as if I was addressing her parents and showing them how much of a horrible daughter they raised. When my wife heard my voice, she turned in my direction, and her face became pale when she saw me. She was so stupid to call my name and ask me what I was doing there, and I went straight and attacked the football coach. At that moment, I wasn't thinking straight. I was so angry and beat the hell out of him, but thankfully some people saw us and separated us. My wife didn't know if she should beg or stop me. She just stood there in shock and couldn't even say a word. I was hurt but tried not to show my emotions until I got home. When I got home, I cried a bit and spent a lot of time throwing out her stuff on our lawn. I also sent the video I recorded to her parents, and they were so disappointed and angry at her. Her sister was the most disappointed because she could not believe my wife would have an affair with her football coach. My wife did not come home that day. She came home the next day and kept banging on my door so I could let her in for us to talk. I told her I'd call the police if she didn't get off my property, and when she didn't leave, I called the police on her. She even resisted them and acted aggressively, so they took her away. Some days later, I received messages from Facebook, and it was my wife texting me with a new Facebook account. I had blocked her old Facebook account, and she begged me to take her back and allow her to explain everything. She claimed I was always so tired when I returned from work, and I didn't give her attention and time like I used to, and that pushed her to get the attention somewhere else. She also said she didn't love her app as much as she loved me and was only with him because of how he made her feel. I was slightly disappointed to hear that, but it still didn't change the fact that she betrayed me by cheating on me. When I told her we were getting divorced, she pleaded that I shouldn't make a decision I would regret, and I should give her a second chance. How bold of her. Long story short, we ended up divorcing, and her parents disinherited her. As for her affair partner, her parents reported him to the school, and the school was tired of always getting different parents complaining about the same thing, so he was fired. Though this happened long ago, and I moved on, it still hurts. I have decided to channel the pain and focus on something more productive. For now, I no longer have the time for women, and I don't think I will anytime soon.